Hello and welcome to your daily dose of Satoshi's news. Today's date is Tuesday, the 20th of May, 2025. The year BSV comes alive. Branch your threads, expand your mind with treechat.ai or your post put on chain. Right, let's see what we got today. We're just going to go through some posts that I've actually put on my own profile here because we need to talk about them as to what's going on, as to why we need Bitcoin. We'll just elaborate on one of the posts. We've got to talk about what Starmer's doing. Again, why we need Bitcoin. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. I've got some posts here from CSW, obviously going on about this recent issues with, what's his face, Charles Hoskinson from Cardano, a scammer. Some articles here from Cointelegraph, two of those. A couple that took my interest on CoinGeek. Some 365 days of Bitcoin history, and then that will be the end of the show. Right, let's get into it.
Greg says he's Satoshi, like a cowboy in the West, riding on the blockchain that they call the very best. 1 million strong, them transactions flying free. Just wait for the terror node, you'll surely see.
All right, here we go. Start on my profile then. Check this out. So, I mean, this was absolutely crazy. I said, this is why the world needs Bitcoin. Japan is going to introduce a bachelor tax. Literally a bachelor tax to try and stimulate people to have more babies. Because obviously populations around the world are absolutely crashing after the old jibby-jabby. Because it's affecting all the placentas and the testes and all that kind of stuff. So that's why they're trying to encourage that. This was a phenomenal article I saw here that I didn't realize that these scanners, these photocopiers, had like a hard drive in them, a memory where literally they store all the documents that they've scanned. So if you pick up like a second-hand photocopier and it's got things like passports and national insurance numbers and tax receipts and bank statements and all sorts in it, they're all there on the hard drive for anybody to steal the information. Like, absolutely shocking. And check this out. I was shocked at this. It said Obama's mother, Stanley Ann Durham, is of a particular race. She's a child of the CIA. Joel Gibbert, who is also of the same religion, has documented that the CIA, this CIA connection. In 1961, Durham gave birth to Barry Hussein Seo Barkaha, obviously goes by Barack Obama, whose name was later changed to Barack Obama, and he is of the same religion there. And I think Barack Obama translates in some languages like the fallen one. Literally like basically sort of named him after Lucifer, which is what their religion worships. I was just like, whoa, it's all coming out now. This is crazy. John Wayne has said here, he said, if Q is real, BSV is real. Check it out. Now this looks awesome. This is where I think Gavin Mail was able to be sent some secret messages. So look, text orange. Text starter there and use code BSV. Says Bitcoin sent and received via SMS text message. Check it out. So you can do that privately, which is when Gavin was saying, I think somebody sent me some BSV via text message and I didn't know who it was. Well, this is how you do it, because all you need is their phone number and you won't know who sent it to you. It looks awesome. It looks awesome. Yeah, I'm absolutely loving that. Got some videos here to start with as well, which are very interesting. Obviously, a little bit of Bitcoin history. 6-minute blurb of Craig talking about what's happened over the years. But great website that. Really, really loving that. Really loving that. Yeah, I just mentioned here that the forked protocols are the ones that had to implement replay protection in order to stop transactions from flowing back onto the main chain. The main Bitcoin chain is BSV. It's the only one that obviously follows the protocol. So that's one of the ways you can do it. It literally just, who was it that added replay protection? Well, it was the forks that had to implement replay protection because they were the ones that were changing the protocol. So anybody using it had to stop the transactions from flowing back onto the main chain. So they had to implement replay protection. That's how they've done it. So yeah, check it out. In fact, there was an article on that. I might actually go over it now because it's quite interesting. See if we can find it. There we go. Here we go. Let's have a look. Right, let's go into this. We'll just have a quick read, see what it says. Preventing replay attacks after the BCH hard fork. Said a replay, no way. Poloniex. So, hard forks that result in new cryptocurrencies present unique opportunities and challenges for crypto exchange operators. One challenge that Poloniex faced after the recent Bitcoin Cash hard fork was protecting our customers against replay attacks. Since the development team behind the SV chain opted not to implement replay protection until nearly 2 weeks after the fork, Poloniex engineers were tasked with devising a solution. Yeah, because replay protection didn't need to be implemented on the BSV chain because they weren't the ones that were forking it. So it was the fork that had to implement replay protection to stop transactions flowing back on the main chain. Like, they didn't want to admit that they were the fork. Obviously, you know, they were trying to pass themselves off as a genuine Bitcoin, just like Greycoin was trying to do, and all the the core developers over at Blockstream. It's the same tactics over and over again. But again, you know, the main chain is the one that hasn't got any replay protection on it, or it's added later. Many in the community were curious as to how Poloniex tackled this particular challenge, so we decided to provide some insight. What is a replay attack? Well, the name implies some kind of malicious act. Replay attacks are something that can occur due to the confusion that nodes experience after a hard fork. This confusion can lead to token holders unintentionally sending transactions to one of the new chains, resulting in a loss of funds. Prior to the hard fork, Bitcoin Cash nodes are all listening for new valid Bitcoin Cash transactions. When a node hears a new transaction, it performs a mathematical test that allows it to verify whether or not the sender is the true owner of the funds. If this mathematical test tells the node that the transaction is valid, it will tell the other node in the network, and the transactions will eventually get added to the blockchain. Immediately after the hard fork, some node operators upgraded to the Bitcoin Cash ABC chain and some to the SV chain. A replay attack occurs when a node on one chain hears a transaction intended for another chain that sounds valid, so it communicates it to the rest of the network. For example, Alice sends one Bitcoin ABC to Bob and ends up also unintentionally sending one Bitcoin SV to Bob as well. Her transaction got replayed on the second chain. Why does this happen? To understand why this happens, we have to take a look under the hood of the Bitcoin Cash transaction. If Alice has a wallet with 15 Bitcoin Cash, she doesn't own 15 individual BCH. She owns multiple chunks of Bitcoin Cash called outputs that add up to 15 Bitcoin Cash. For example, Alice has 15 BCH, might be a combination of two outputs, 10 BCH and 5 BCH. Immediately after the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, when the Bitcoin chain split, Alice now has identical outputs on two different blockchains, 10 BCH ABC, 5 BCH ABC, and 10 BCH SV, 5 BCH SV. The same private key can be used to move all of these outputs. For simplicity, let's say Alice wants to send her 5 BCH ABC to Bob, though the transaction typically involves a combination of multiple outputs. Using a private key, she signs a message that says, send the specific output of 5 BCH ABC to Bob. At this point, and BCH ABC is just simply BCH now, but they didn't really know what to call them at the time. At the point BCH, a BCH node can perform the mathematical test we mentioned earlier that proves that Alice possessed the private key to send the transaction. The problem arises when the Bitcoin SV node overhears the transaction. The Bitcoin SV node can perform the same mathematical test and come to the conclusion after Alice used her private key to send the specific output of 5 BCH or 5 BCH SV to Bob. Alice's digital signature is valid on both chains, even though she only intended to send 5 BCH ABC to Bob. She also ended up sending him the matching output of 5 BCH SV as well. How to prevent replay attacks. You can see replay attacks can occur immediately after a hard fork because everyone has identical outputs on two different chains. A digital signature that moves outputs onto one chain is capable of moving matching outputs onto the other. However, as both chains are mined separately after the fork, new unique outputs are introduced via a new Coinbase rewards. A Coinbase reward on the ABC chain consists of outputs that do not exist on the SV chain, and vice versa. These post-fork outputs are key to preventing replay attacks. Let's say, for example, Jimmy is a Bitcoin Cash miner. If after the fork Jimmy starts mining BCH, ABC, and gets a Coinbase reward of newly created BCH, these would be outputs that don't exist on the SV chain. If he sent these 5 BCH to Alice, he could then send them to Bob without fear of the replay attack. If the Bitcoin SV node overheard these transactions, it would recognize the output Alice is trying to send no Bitcoin SV would move. Preventing replay attacks with post-fork outputs, immediately after the fork, Poloniex began collecting a small set of post-fork outputs, or UTXOs. If Alice were a Poloniex customer and requested to withdraw BCH, or 5 BCH, we would mix at least one post-fork output. If a BCH node overheard our transaction, the inclusion of the post-fork output would prevent the SV node from recognizing the transaction. The digital signature would move the specific outputs on the BCH chain and not on the SV chain, because those specific outputs do not exist on the SV chain. By employing the method of including one post-fork output with the BCH and BSV withdrawals, Poloniex was able to operate with confidence that the exchange and its customers would not be subject to the loss of funds resulting from replay attacks. But I mean, that's quite a good article there. Yeah, the main thing is here, since the developer... one challenge that Poloniex faced after the recent Bitcoin Cash hard fork was protecting the customers against replay attacks. Since the development team behind the SV chain opted not to implement replay protection until 2 weeks after the fork. There we go. So it was 2 weeks then. So they were like, all right, well, you did it first, so we'll just now do it to confirm the separation. But they're the ones who've done it, because they're the ones who forked. So these forked security offerings, away from the only way to commoditize data, the ones that implemented replay protection, they are the phony ones. They are the economically worthless security offerings, which will soon come to light, because only Satoshi Nakamoto has the scaling tenacity and willpower and the tech know-how to be able to do it. All these other forks are just absolute pieces of utter garbage. Let's move on then. So this post here was at Tooth Found in Chicken Nuggets, and again we've got lots of articles here. They've been, human remains have been found in this particular restaurant all over the world. In Britain, in China, I think twice actually. In Japan. I mean, I've got all the articles. It's just like, and they've admitted that that's where they get rid of all the bodies. The children and all that, pounds and pounds and pounds of flesh, and now they're finding it. And this woman here was just like, you hear the stories, but you don't think it will happen to you, and then it did. Like, literally. That's why I put those emojis there. Sally Alger is here, posted, if I had $1 for every time socialism worked, I would have $0. Coincidentally, if it did work, I would also have $0. Exactly. Socialism means that you don't end up with anything at all. Everything literally just gets handed back to the state. That's it. But and in a dictatorship, everything gets handed to a dictator. But I mean, really, socialism and communism is just simply dictatorship disguised as being for your benefit in a group of people. But it's just blatant dictatorship. Just look at what Keir Starmer is doing now, literally going against the referendum, the will of the people to get out from underneath the clutches of the European Central Bank and the unelected European courts and all that, giving away sovereignty. Absolutely outrageous what is going on. This is why we need a sovereign money. Well, sovereign money. The money that nobody controls, and we have sovereignty over. A sovereign commodity. And also here, I said this is also why the world needs Bitcoin. Keir Starmer has now changed pensions. Pensions are now no longer entitlements, according to him. Like, what right does he have to do that? He says, right, so pensions are now benefits. So now anybody who's literally on a pension, paid in all their lives, they're now considered benefit scroungers. Absolutely unbelievable. And if it's a benefit, they can take that benefit away. And again, but they can do this because they're using securities fraud and they're in bed with the banks. It all comes down to economic power that they can do this. And it was, funnily enough, this actually leads on to George Carlin here, who did the quote about how they're coming for your social security. It's one big club and you ain't in it. And he also made this statement here, which I'll just play on my channel here on Rumble. Check this out. Here we go.
Customs. Swearing on the Bible. You understand that shit? They tell you to raise your right hand, place your left hand on the Bible. Does this stuff really matter? Which hand? Does God really give a fuck about details like this? Suppose you put your right hand on the Bible, you raise your left hand. Would that count? Or would God say, sorry, wrong hand, try again? And why does one hand have to be raised? What is the magic in this gesture?
Good question.
This seems like some sort of a primitive voodoo mojo shtick.
Yeah, and that's what made me realize.
Why not put your left hand on the Bible, let your right hand hang down by your side?
Good question.
It's more natural. Or put it in your pocket. Remember what your mother used to say? Don't put your hands in your pockets. Does she know something we don't know? Is this hand shit really important? What is the big deal about swearing to God in the first place? Why does swearing to God mean you're going to tell the truth?
There we go. When they say place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, this is what they're doing. So what this really means is you are accepting to the deception of the court. That's what it really means. That's what it really means, because before you've even been sworn in, you have already accepted the deception of the court by making the sign before you even swear your oath to tell the truth. That's what they're doing. That is what it's all about. That is why they say specifically, raise your right hand. Like when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, hold on a minute. Let me just check this. Let me see whose right hand is raised. It's that one there. And the left hand is down, which is on the Bible down there. So you're consenting to the deception of the court before you've even sworn in a major oath. That's why they do it. The whole court is about deception. It is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this guy here, Graham David, was explaining the Fabian Society and how they're the ones that are basically behind all of this that's going on right now, pulling the lever, pulling the strings behind the scenes. They're the ones, along with the Institute for International Affairs at Chatham House, where they've got the Chatham House rules, where they can discuss treason and all that. Honestly, I mean, they're just making rules up for themselves. It's just literally unbelievable. But the reason they can do that is because they're in bed with the banks. And check this out. Robin Minotti said, it's almost as if everything that's happened in the last 5 years was driven by the Silicon Valley technocrats, plutocrats. And check this out. Look, Telegraph said here, the proof that lockdown critics were debanked because of their views. PayPal admits it terminated Molly Kingsley's account after she spoke out against COVID vaccinations for children and school closures. I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, the tyranny. I mean, people are still asleep. I mean, it just absolutely blows my mind after all this time. I mean, can you imagine, literally, after 5 years of this and still thinking that everything is fine and going back to normal? Like, honestly, absolutely shocking. And check this out. This is the next bit of treason. Look, Starmer hails common sense EU deal as Brexiteers condemn surrender. I mean, literally, there hasn't even been a referendum on going back into Europe. I mean, it's literally, this is dictatorship. Like, somebody needs to call him out on this. They are no longer left-wing socialists. They are full-on hardcore right-wing dictator is what he's becoming. It's just unbelievable what is going on at the moment. And again, it's all because they're in bed with the banks. That's it. The banks literally control everything, as Liz Truss found out when she was Prime Minister. She was just like, hold on a minute. If I become Prime Minister, I'm the one putting the levers. And she was just like, well, that's not happened. You know, it was the governor of the Bank of England and the Institute for Fiscal Affairs or something like that that was doing it. I mean, this is why we need a true money where they can't use to control us, because that's where they're getting their power from. Shocking. Right, let's go into this post here from CSW. 20 minutes gone already. Again, I mean, this is the massive grift from Cardano, but we knew this was going to happen anyway. But Craig sums it up beautifully. He says, Cardano, blockchain's answer to the question nobody asked. A glorified petri dish of academic masturbation dressed up in conference slides and peer-reviewed slops. And Charles, I'm not a Bond villain, just drawn like one Hoskinson, the messiah of mediocrity. The monocled nerd who walked out of a basement seminar on Ethereum, puffed himself up like a cane toad, and declared, I shall build an empire of white papers. Cardano's latest scandal, accusations of ledger manipulation and $619 million oopsie in token control, isn't shocking. It's not even interesting. It's inevitable. This is what you get when you substitute governance for guts, decentralization for PowerPoint, and purpose for Ponzi-grade puffery. Of course it's centralized. Of course he can rewrite the ledger. Cardano was never a blockchain. It was always a gated spreadsheet with a toga fetish. That's hilarious. Again, I mean, we've all seen that picture of Hoskinson literally in front of the whiteboard, like trying to explain it, trying to look like a scientist with his glasses and all that. Like, honestly. And when you realise that Cardano is just simply mined by Input-Output Hong Kong, IOHK is their ticker symbol. Literally, it's a blockchain with a one single central miner, and they won't let anybody else mine it. So literally, that's why they had to do an ICO. And funnily enough, they did an ICO in Japan. Because they're literally they're pre-mining them all the tokens for themselves. Yeah, unbelievable. Well, yeah, but let's be honest. ADA, that's Cardano, has been a temple to a vapor since day one. A brilliant feat of marketing, sure. Wrap it in Latin, hire some Oxford rejects, and publish enough pseudo-academic detritus to confuse the suits and distract the plebs. It's not technology, it's theatre, a decentralised platform where the founding pharaoh can reach into the guts of the ledger and play God with a monetary supply. That's not innovation, that's Zimbabwe with code. Meanwhile, the Cardano faithful still cling to this derelict garbage like it's the Ark. They talk about stark rewards as if they weren't just slow motion theft. They speak in tongues about epochs and Ouroboros, not realizing they've been conned into a cult that doesn't even deliver miracles, just updates, delays, and ledger as a mutable as Charles's job history. The sheer irony, Hoskinson insists he's a genius, yet somehow manages to confuse centralized fiat mechanics with distributed consensus. He's the kind of bloke who'd open a vegan butcher and try to sell you tofu lamb chops with a side of a sovereign identity. Cardano, we're told, is the future of finance. The future apparently includes giving one bearded man-child the keys to the kingdom and trusting him not to press the red button. Bravo. So now, faced with allegations that he's fiddled with the ledger like a teenager with admin rights in Minecraft, the founder, another Kafkazi monument of bureaucracy, is launching an audit. Right. That's right. That's like asking a koala to write an industry safety report. The only thing they've successfully audited is their own credibility, and even that's marked overdrawn. If there's a takeaway here, it's this. Never trust a blockchain built by men who think the goal is to impress professors. Cardano was always a dream for those who wanted decentralization without risk, accountability without cost, and profit without sweat. But dreams die, and sometimes they do it publicly, dragging $1 billion ledger and a flannelled, shirted demigod down with them. Cheers to the future, lads. If you're holding ADA, just remember, when the price hits 0, at least Charles will still have tenure in the religion he built. And this was in response to... how's that gone? Where they said... Cryptos R Us said Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson is accused of rewriting the network ledger to manipulate token flows and seize control of $619 million worth of ADA. Charles denies the claims, and the Cardano Foundation is preparing to launch, probably like an investigation is what they're going to say. But I mean, like, he sold out ages ago anyway. You know, he's I think he had like 500 million. Maybe he's reaching in more to get some more because he spunked so much of it. I mean, who knows? Who knows? It's shocking what's going on. But that's what you get for shitcoinery. Literally shitcoinery. Right, that's 25 minutes actually. Haven't really got time to read these articles. Senate stablecoin vote splits Democrats amid concerns over corruption. Oh, surprise, surprise. Yeah. It's like they're going to be arguing about who has central control over the stablecoin. No, it's going to be us. No, it's going to be us. It's like who's going to have control to be able to print their own currency. That's what it's about. There is going to be massive rifts, and that's exactly what's going on there. The Australian court ruling could lead to 640 million in Gradecoin tax funds. Refunds. A judge's ruling in a criminal case may pave the way for $640 million in tax refunds, challenging the Australian tax office's long-held stance on crypto taxation. That actually sounds like quite interesting. And a CoinGeek had articles here. Kurt Whitaker's written one saying BTC's red thread. I was just curious about that one. They've got another one saying BSV solution to censorship digital identity challenges. That one also sounds quite interesting. And UK requires digital asset firms to report customer data. Just unbelievable what's going on. Literally no privacy whatsoever. Right to privacy out the window. You know, that's what's going on at the moment. Some 365 days of Bitcoin history, with it being the 20th of May. So the 20th of May last year, the year anniversary, Judge James Mellor released his written judgment for the Copa case the day before the start of the London Blockchain Conference. Yeah, here it is. So it was a year ago today, releasing his written judgment. Honestly, calling it a judgment. It was an opinion piece is all it is, because that was not a court of law. It was not a court of law. There wasn't even examination, let alone cross-examination. There was no jury there. It was an administration process, a verbal contract that they had with Craig to say, are you going to be bound by Judge Miller's decision, even though he's not a judge? Like, honestly. Absolutely outrageous what went on there. Absolutely outrageous. And check this out, on the 20th to the 21st of May. So this was the start of the Bitcoin New York Agreement. And the Bitcoin New York Agreement was literally where, you know, you got Blockstream, the deep state technical team, trying to bring in SegWit and all this kind of stuff. It's a 5-minute read, so I haven't really got time to go through it. But I mean, fascinating, really. This was the first meeting on some serious scaling, because the blocks were getting full and people were just like, look, just increase the size of the block. And they were like, no, we've got to keep decentralization. Yeah, and this is where this is where all the forks happened. You know, and now the story has come to light, and now everybody knows what's really happened, and we can smell the bullshit. Oh yeah. Right, there we go. That is a 27-minute show. Hope you enjoyed it. So as ever, if you enjoy these updates, please ding your donations for your appreciation to either satoshi@sendme.com, handcash.io, rockwallet.me, simply.cash, related.com, or senti.ch. We'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. So as ever, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.
2 years SegWit, which we lied and cheated and stealed, and I was part of the lying and cheating and stealing to get SegWit, to get Lightning, which by the way had critical vulnerabilities and lost people's money.
The king still has one more move.